What do some of the most successful people in our industry all have in common when it comes to how they got started? Here's a hint: almost nothing. Today's episode is a special one. Not only are we celebrating our 200th episode, but we're also taking a step back to explore the very beginning of some incredible journeys in this industry. Welcome to the Salon Scoop, the podcast that helps salon owners and salon professionals grow their business, boost their brand, and stay inspired. From salon marketing and social media to leadership and growth, we uncover the strategies and stories that move the industry forward. If you love learning, growing, and are serious about leveling up your salon business and brand, you've just found your new go-to podcast. Today is a big one. It's a special day to be here for our 200th episode. If you asked me to go back when we first started this journey over 4 years ago as to whether or not we would get to 200 episodes, I probably would not have bet money on it. I didn't really know where we were going to go with this show. The purpose was to try to be able to just bring some stories, bring some education, bring some inspiration to the industry. And what's come from it, when I think back about the 200 episodes, what stands out the most isn't just, the episodes themselves. It's actually the conversations and the stories, the people that I've had the opportunity to learn from and just meet. It's unbelievable who I have been able to have on this show and connect with and be able to bring their stories, bring their journeys to life, right? With the hopes that by highlighting some of their challenges, some of their successes, some of their best practices, everybody else can learn, right, from who's come before them. And that journey is interesting. One thing that's come up again and again is how different every single one of those journeys started, right? Some people fell into the industry by accident. Some, grew up in the salon because of, their parents' generation. Some came from completely different careers. So for this milestone episode, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Instead of focusing on one guest or one topic, we're going to go back to the beginning, literally. Not just the beginning of our first episode, but you're going to hear clips from past conversations with some of the most respected and successful professionals in our industry, right? Sharing one simple thing: how they got started. And we're going to start with the very first episode, number 1, that we did. I'll never forget this, and extremely grateful that Wendy Belanger accepted to be our first guest. And we'll be also hearing the stories of Candy Shah, the Ballet Lama, Farhanna Premji, Sean Godard, and the iconic one and only Sam Villa. And you'll hear how his teacher actually told him that he was not suited for this industry. Imagine, right, if he had taken that advice and not come into this industry and not had the impact that he's been able to have over his tremendous career. It's unbelievable. So as you listen, I want you to pay attention to the patterns, but really the differences, right? Because there's a powerful reminder in all of this. There's no single path to success in this industry. So whether you're just starting out or feeling stuck or even questioning your direction, this episode might be just what you are looking for. And I want to thank everybody in advance. If this is your first episode that you're listening to or your 200th, we appreciate you following along on our journey and are excited to continue to bring you stories and best practices and education for the next 200 episodes. Let's start by taking it back to where it all began in episode number 1, getting to know Wendy Belanger's origin story.
Can you just give us a quick background, sort of where you grew up and why you first decided to go into the beauty industry in the first place?
Okay, well, I'm a Saskatchewan girl, and I grew up in Regina, and I wasn't always slated to do hair. I was going to take speech pathology at Minot State University because my father wanted his kids to go to university. But I was always doing my friend's hair. Like the second, we'd have a school dance or we'd have something coming up. Everybody's coming to my house, I was doing their hair. And then one day my father just said to me, you're good at it. Have you ever thought about doing that? And I said, you know what, Dad, if you let me even to take like a skip year to go to hair school, I'll do that. I promise I'll go to university after. And yeah, I said, if you could let me do that, that'd be great. And so I went to hair school in Saskatoon, and really the rest is history.
So what, sort of what happened once you got into school, kind of in a new city? How did that work out for you?
Well, it was my first time being away from home. So this is an interesting story. You were allowed to miss, like I was going out all the time. Okay, let's be honest. I'm not around my dad, whatever. And so
little party girl.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. And you were allowed to miss one day a month for 9 months of school. And then after that, you had to pay like $25 for each day you miss. And I had 2 months of school left and I owed $1,000. Yeah, it was bad. And so I ended up getting suspended from school. And so the director called me in and she was like, you know what, this is too much. We can't do this anymore. You're going to be suspended. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's really bad. And I'm like, oh, 5 days off. And then all of a sudden she said, and just so you know, we're going to call your dad. And I was like, okay, now I'm in trouble. So no. Yeah, it was a little crazy. So yeah, they called my dad.
Okay. He must have not been very happy.
He was not happy. He said to me, he said, I'm tired of doing this. Now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go and get a job. And so I got a job at Red Lobster. And so I took my suspension for 5 days. And it's really weird because on the last day of my suspension, it was my first day of training at Red Lobster. And I was driving to work. I had my girlfriend in the Jeep with me. We had just gone camping. And I was like, you know what? I got 3 hours of training. Don't worry about it. We'll go out. And so I was driving to work and I came around the corner and I was driving straight and I could see down the way that there was this car that came into my lane and we were going to have a head-on collision. And so I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like I don't know what to do. And I know that if I went left, I would have had my own head-on collision with the oncoming traffic. And I know that if I went right, I would have hit him because that's the way that he was coming. And I'll never forget that moment. And I waited till the last possible second and I swerved left into the oncoming traffic. And I don't know how that happened, but I missed the cars that were coming that way. I spun around the first time. The back of the Jeep hit the curb. Then it came up on the curb. It went and hit a tree from the behind. And then when we'd gone camping, we took out the back seat and we didn't bolt it in properly. So the seat flew forward and it hit us. So essentially I got rear-ended 3 times in the same accident. And, this is a real tragic time for me, but I can honestly say it was a TSN turning point for me because I was in this really huge accident. Ambulance came, took us to the hospital. The guy was drag racing. He lost control of his car is what happened. When we got there at the hospital, the doctor said to me, you really hurt yourself. And I said, well, can I work? And he said, where do you work? And I said, I work at Red Lobster. And he said, oh, well, you probably have to take some time off. And I remember thinking, cool, you're right. Don't have to go crazy. But then I said, what about school? And he said, oh, school should be fine. He said, so what are you taking? And I said, I'm going to be a hairdresser. And he looked at me and he said, oh, baby girl, he said, you may want to pick a different career. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you just got rear-ended 3 times in the same accident. This could cause long-term damage. And so a hairdresser, as you all know, hands up, those are all the muscles that you use. So you may want to rethink it. And I can tell you that it was in that moment that I realized, you know what I mean? It's like you don't know what you have until it's almost taken away from you. And I think it was in that moment that I realized how much I loved doing hair and what it truly meant to me. And so that for me, I think was the TSN turning point to make me realize what I had. It changed everything because when I went back to school, she didn't end up charging me the money because I went back to school. I was early because I missed 2.5 months of school and work, right? To to
The
do this.
whole
So I
recovery
was really
process
hurt.
and everything.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I got hurt and I did. I missed 2.5 months of school and work. And it really gave me an opportunity to think about, what do you really want? And I'm like, if I can do hair, I will never take it for granted again. And so when I finally went back, I was like first one at school. I was never late. I was like, people were not like, if they weren't doing something, like, do you have any idea what's going on, what we have here? And I was like this prize student afterwards. And maybe that's why my picture's on the wall there. I'm probably the most turned around student. But it was like in that moment, I realized that I will never take it for granted again.
Candy, you mentioned kind of your early stages. I want to just quickly get into that. You've been in the industry your whole life. I think third generation stylist in your family. What's your first memory of being in a salon, and how did you know that this was really the path that you want to continue in your family traditions?
Well, I've never known anything but a salon. My father obviously was a hairdresser for over 60 years before he finally retired. My mother was a makeup artist. My home was always filled with some of the great iconic people in our industry, the forefathers and foremothers in our industry. So I've never not known hairdressing. I like to tell everybody, however, I never went to beauty school. I never went to college. I was cutting hair in the locker room of my high school at the age of 13 and trade for math homework. And that is a true story. So I've never not known the salon. I used to ride my bike to my daddy's salon when I was a young kid and fill the Coke machine, sweep the floor, fold the towels. It's just been a part of my fabric my whole life.
Do you remember an early salon icon that you got to meet at a young age that really had an impact on you?
Well, I mean, I could, the list is endless. I mean, between Horst Reckelbacker, Vidal Sassoon, John and Susie Chadwick, the Paul Mitchell, the list goes on and on. John Sahag, I mean, all of them. I mean, there's just been so many. I've been very fortunate because back in those days, there was no social media. No one sat around and looked at everybody's Instagram account or Facebook account. They actually broke bread together. They stayed in each other's homes. They were all dirt poor and didn't have two nickels to rub together. And together they collectively created brands, created opportunities, created wonderful, budding, successful salons. And so I've been very fortunate through just my father's early upbringing and then the organization of Entre Coiffure. Those things really helped me to see the world from from backstage, if you will, is seeing the hairdressing world from the backstage view versus sitting in the audience. And so I was very lucky to do that.
How did you get into the industry in the first place? I always like to hear people's sort of like origin stories. What was the trigger for you? Where were you? And what was that inspiration to actually go down this path in the first place?
It's a long story. I'll make it really quick, but I was in high school, super academic. I was in like a French IB program. My sister was finishing school and was going to become a doctor. And I think, again, like I said, immigrant parents, they want you to like become a doctor, lawyer, or an accountant, or marry a doctor, lawyer, and accountant. And I did neither. I decided when I was in high school that I wanted to kind of go into like the beauty realm. So I started that, worked in a salon spa, and actually ended up having a bit of a medical thing that took me off from doing physical work. And so the manager at that salon spa put me on the front desk for about 6 weeks. And I absolutely loved working the front desk at this hair salon spa, which was really interesting. I was only 17 at the time. From there, I ended up moving into oil and gas somehow. Someone kind of approached me and said, hey, you've got these skills, you love admin, like, why don't you move into oil and gas? So I did that for 3 years, went to university for HR. And at that point, I was in my mid-20s, and all I could think about was the salon and spa. So I ended up going back to school, this time for hair. I was one of the older girls in my class, but I knew that like I really wanted it at this point. I think my parents were tired of me switching careers, and I was like, no, I promise I'm going to stick with this one. And I went into hair school. I graduated early with honors. I kind of realized in that time that when I love something, I really love something, and I put my all into it. It was the first time that I felt never this dread to go to school. I actually really enjoyed hair school. I worked at a mall salon for the first little bit. I got hired on as an assistant, and I loved every part of the journey. Like there was only a few years in this whole time of growing my clientele that I was like, what am I doing? But other than that, I loved it. And I knew that this was kind of my calling, which I know a lot of hairdressers are driven by passion. I think the ones that truly are will figure out a way to kind of make it work and to get through like some of those hard times. So it's kind of how I got into it.
Sean, we want to give our listeners a real sense of sort of what it's like to go through the educator artist journey. But I like to always start just by asking how you got into the industry in the first place, because everyone's story is so unique. So how did you first decide that you were going to be a stylist?
So it was an interesting journey. I think the fastest way to explain it is that, like a lot of people, I didn't know what I wanted to do at first, but I knew that I was creative, and I found myself always doing friends' hair in high school, just kind of for fun. I loved going to the salon and seeing what was happening when girls would go get their hair done. I'd go back and try and do hair in the bathroom with whatever products I could find. And, you know, the results were okay. We're teenagers, whatever. Fast forward, when it was time to figure out a career, I knew that I wasn't in the academic world per se, that it was just going to be something creative. But, you know, at the time, being a hairstylist was very much still not, and I know still to some people it's not thought of as a career, but like at the time, it was really not something that you would consider going into unless you were like, you know, a stay-at-home mom or you got a family. It wasn't thought of being like a booming career where you could make money. So one of my friends actually got into doing hair, went into hair school at Hair Design Center in Nova Scotia. That's where I started. And he was like, it's really fun. You should consider doing it. And so the reality was I had to get into something very fast that I could support myself in. So hair school is a shorter period of learning than a lot of other things. So I jumped into it with like, what do I got to lose? It was something that I was interested in, but let's see how, with training, how far I can come with that. So that was kind of what got me in the door. And honestly, after that, there's been no looking back.
Just been one thing after the next.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
When would you say that you decided that you wanted to go down the educator artist path, and what was that trigger for you?
So there was a few things that brought me to that world. One, I never would have expected that I would be here because I was actually, believe it or not, shy, kind of soft-spoken, didn't really put myself out there in the way that I do now. So
Stop.
Yeah,
no way.
I was the kid that would call out of school if I had to do a public speaking presentation. I was so scared of getting in front of people. I hated being like looked at. I know, LOL. But, you know, things have changed with training, which we'll probably get into as well. But I think the thing that got me into it was when I first left hair school and started at my first salon, I realized really quickly that education was key to my success as a stylist. And I had a lot of great opportunities with the people that I was working with and the school that I went to push me into those opportunities and realize that world even existed. So I realized early on also that education's expensive too. So the thing was, I'm like, well, if I could get involved with this company, then they're going to educate me and I'm going to be able to get opportunities by volunteering a lot of free time to shadow who turned out to be mentors and get all of that education for free, and then ultimately be able to add that to my tool belt. But I want to share one key thing about how I did get discovered, let's say. It was with one of my sales reps in the salon, actually a full-time educator that was in my salon. She came up to me and was like, I think you'd be really great doing being an artist. And I was like, me? No, like there's no way. I'm never going to get up in front of people. Me? And she was like, no, we train you. Like you go through a whole process. And she explained how the Redken artist training really worked. So it was with her belief that ultimately got me my foot into the door. And yeah, I can never look back now.
All right, Sam, let's sort of set the stage for our listeners a little bit here. And I mean, you've been an industry icon for a long time now. And I just want to let our listeners get to know you a little bit better, and start by telling us maybe how you got into the beauty industry in the first place, kind of a quick origin story. Who were you? Where were you? And what was the trigger for you to get involved?
I grew up around hair. I grew up in my dad's barbershop, did not like it. I shined the shoes, It was something I always thought I would never do. Went to college. I was playing volleyball, came home one weekend and said, I want to go to cosmetology school. My dad was clapping underneath the table. My mom was like, what? And I had one more year of college. And my mom said, okay, if you want to do that, great, but you're going to finish your college if you don't like it. So off to beauty school I went. I'll never forget Scott. I was there for probably a couple months. My teacher came up to me and she said, Sam. I said, yes, Miss Lena. She said, your client over underneath the dryer, the rollers are falling out and you need to go over there, put them back in, and you might consider doing something else. That weekend, my dad called me up and said, hey, what are you doing the weekend? I said, Dad, I can't afford to do anything. He said, well, I'm going to pick you up Sunday morning early. We're going to go to a hair show. And that's when my life changed. I actually went to see Vidal Sassoon back in 1976 and 3 other gentlemen that just melted hair. And I told my dad, I want to do that. I want to be a teacher someday, a platform artist, and stand up there and teach. And that's when my career pretty much took off. I knew what I wanted to do.
Wow. Can you imagine, just like I highlighted in the intro, if Sam Villa had taken the advice of that teacher and had not gone into the industry? It's hard to imagine. I'm sure it's hard for Sam to imagine, right? Where would he have been? I think what stands out to me after listening to all these stories is just how different each journey really is, right? There's no perfect starting point. There's no single right decision. There's no clear, straight path that guarantees success in our industry. And yet so many people that you heard from today built incredible careers in this industry, right? They're all icons, would go down in the Hall of Fame. Not because they followed the same path, but because they committed to the path that they were on. They stayed curious, they stayed open, they kept learning, growing, and saying yes to opportunities, even when the direction wasn't perfectly clear. So if there's one takeaway from this 200th episode, it's this. You don't need to have it all figured out in order to move forward. You just need to take the next step and stay committed to that journey. And one step will lead to another, and one door will open up another door. And we have no idea where we'll end up. But if we stay committed, stay passionate, stay hungry, typically those doors become bigger and bigger, more opportunities flow into our lives, and we end up somewhere even better than we could have ever imagined. If you know someone in this industry who needs to hear that right now, share this episode with them. Right? And if you've been an avid follower, again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for following along on this journey with us. If you haven't yet followed the show, it would really mean a lot to us to stay informed and make sure that you don't miss future episodes when we drop key episodes with new industry icons. We have so much in store over the next little bit. Can't wait to share all of that with you. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights on future episodes. Happy 200, and here's to the next one. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Salon Scoop podcast. This show is produced by Salon S.O.S, a digital marketing agency by industry professionals for industry professionals. If you want simple and affordable solutions for any of your salon marketing needs, such as websites, client loyalty, Google search rankings, social media, or more, come visit us at salonsos.ca or on Instagram at salon.s.o.s. If you want to hear more episodes like this and help us continue to bring the industry great content, it would mean so much to us if you would support us in one of the following ways. Either share this episode with one other industry professional, and rate the show on Spotify or write us a quick review on Apple Music. We want to hear your feedback. If you have follow-up questions or ideas for future episodes, please reach out. DM us on Instagram at salonus.s.o.s or hit us up on our website again at salonsos.ca. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go get your hustle on, keep smiling, and we'll catch you on our next episode.